Hey there, welcome to School of Emo, the podcast where we dive into the world of emo, pop punk, and everything in between. If you've ever found yourself in your car screaming the lyrics to Taking Back Sunday, wearing way too much eyeliner in the early 2000s, adding a buckle or a chain to every outfit you've put on, you are in the right place. I'm Erin Judge, and each week I will be your fellow student, guiding you through the music, the culture, and the history that shaped an entire generation of angsty teens. I am not the teacher of this school. I am a fellow student, here to learn alongside you and from you. Together, we will cover a lot of information that doesn't really matter, but will remind us of the days of stalking MySpace channels and getting lost in chat rooms. So connect your dial up, turn on your webcam, and let's go to School of Emo. Welcome back to School of Emo. Recently on TikTok, I was sharing about this podcast and just my love of emo music and my own experience with it. And someone asked, before they were willing to follow me or listen to anything I had to say, they wanted to know what my Emo Mount Rushmore was. And I thought that would be a fantastic episode to talk about who, like the actual people, not the bands, but the heads of my Mount Rushmore, who I would put there, why, and then hear your thoughts, because I'm curious without any judgment. I think we've talked about this a million times. Like, truly, everyone experiences music in their own way. I think one of the best things about this world of music is that it's very open to our own experiences. And I think where we find different bands, where we find the music itself in our lives can influence what we think about it and how we define it ourselves and how we experience it even now. And I think that's very true when we look at who the figures or like the leaders in the space would be. And there's lots of different reasons for them. I am biased towards my own, and I've really thought this through. But this is also from a perspective of a millennial who was born in 92 and, very lightly experienced this in the third wave, but really got into the roots of this later in life. So that is what's influencing my Mount Rushmore. But I'm open to hearing your thoughts on my takes, but also what you would do instead. So before I even start, think about what yours would be, like maybe jot down the names or just put them in your head really quickly so that you can see how they compare as we talk about mine. And yes, it's a debate, but it's not that serious. Life's not that serious. So, not meant to be a stressful debate, just meant to be kind of fun to think about. So, face number one, this is no surprise, and this is something I learned later. Jeff Rickley, lead singer of Thursday, but beyond Thursday, because Thursday, I mean, they were one of the biggest bands of the second wave of emo. And while they didn't necessarily put out that much music or have that much success that you could define in like a mainstream way that we saw with bands in the, mid to like 2000s and the 2010s, Jeff was able with Thursday to bring kind of this political introspection. So bridging that gap between what was very punk, very much politically driven, social justice forward, still does to this day, but brought it to the scene in a very emo way, which at the time was so fresh and different. And the sound itself is also different. Like there's a little screaming there, but like it's not screamo. It's not that aggressive, but it is deeply aggressive. Like it's almost like a dancing kind of political movement. Very interesting. And I think he represents emo as the most like raw and unfiltered version. So tackling issues like trauma, addiction, societal pressure, bridging that gap between this kind of hardcore punk, but something very emotionally expansive and like mature and introspective and vulnerable, which I believe made emo so powerful from that second wave to the third wave. Not only that, but he signed bands like My Chemical Romance. He's been involved as like a mentor in the scene. So beyond Thursday's impact, I think Jeff Rickley has had such a big impact in the scene, still tours with some of the big bands, like supports them, has continued to be involved. And if you are not familiar with him, going into our Thursday deep dive episode from last year is a great place to start, as we talked about it. And you saw where I kind of fell in love with their impact on the scene and still do to this day. Very big fan. Base number two for me is the one and only Chris Carrabba of Dashboard Confessional. So while Jeff is the poet, the words, Chris is the confession. He did such a great job, I think, in a very just straightforward way, stripping everything down, showcasing vulnerability to its fullness. I think some of emo is being vulnerable, but with the protection of the hardcore sound and the energy and the music and the bandmates. Whereas Chris, especially in the 90s, was the most vulnerable, like naked on the stage, basically, right? And completely like without hiding, like laid his heart out, which was so unique. I know he was bullied for that. Like fans of his were bullied for that at the time, but so powerful. And again, different in the space for someone like him to just bleed on a stage like that without the security of the louder sound and the aggression that a lot of emo showcased, which I think was really powerful. And because he stood with it, he made that vulnerability more mainstream, which I think, I know a lot of people don't like the mainstream success of emo and like may not define any of these bands as part of that. But I do believe that if we think about the impact, the legacy, the way emo still, like the scene itself still survives today, it only happens because of that mainstream success. And he was able to do that. And I think what he did really well, because he just created such an open space for vulnerability, as he really brought fans together to be vulnerable. And that like therapy like session of a concert was so true with him early in the early years, but even today. So I think if we think about the sheer vulnerability of emo, Chris Carrabba is that and is the leader of that, has done that so well. And again, has paved the way for so many other bands to follow. Face number 3, also not a surprise. I think this one's probably going to be the most debated, like whatever you want to think about it, but it is Gerard Way, a visionary taking emo to a completely different level and defining it in a different way. I think in really driving a lot of the mainstream success. He made it bigger. Some people hate it, but he's a leader. I mean, he is definitely a maverick, I guess, in this scene and in music. And if you're not familiar, Gerard Way is the lead singer of My Chemical Romance. And he was able to expand emo into this world building theatrics, like a completely different way. I feel like he's almost the opposite of Chris Carrabba. Like there's so much more to it, but it's almost like feeling through this different level of like creativity and maybe bridging the gap to people who like the comic book world, the nerds, these different worlds of people that just think creatively and think differently, where you can feel, but then process that almost through your brain and think differently about it. I think he is one of the biggest leaders in world building within the emo space. And that directly impacted the scene. When we think about attire, like clothes that people wear, like makeup styles, like he definitely led the way in a lot of this expression that was very different. And emo is about full on expression. So Chris Carrabba did it in a very stripped down, vulnerable way, whereas Gerard Way did it in a very theatrical, world building, kind of mind expansive way, which we can't deny as being a huge part of the success that we see today and the bands that have followed. I think he definitely paved the way for a lot of that. Face number 4, this may be my own Mount Rushmore, but I think if we look back, especially in the third wave, a lot of you would agree, but that is the one and only Burt McCracken of The Used. He brought not just the sadness of emo and not even really the anger, but the chaos of pain. So, if Chris Carrabba took his heart and poured out all the sadness of the pain he felt in the most vulnerable way he could. I think Bert expressed his pain. It's like almost the, if I'm going down, the whole world's going down with me, like deeply in pain and figuring out the world and just the most chaotic, unhinged way possible. And I think that's that world of kind of the screamo, but not even aggression. Like there's some aggression there, but it's like just deeply painful, like lashing out of pain, human experience that we have. And I think he defined that so well within the scene and has influenced a lot of bands that have come with that and have been able to find success in that as well. He brought like kind of a danger, like the energy's different, right? And I think that showcases a lot of like a subset of this genre that he has done very well. And I honestly don't think it's enough credit for the used as a whole, but Bert especially within that. And they've stuck it out and like continued to evolve and showcase that. But there's this level of like chaotic pain and feeling and emotion, which is so important. We need all of it, right? The kind of political, like, I don't know what to think about this world, I want to change it, of Jeff Rickley, to the I am so sad and I feel all the things of Chris Carrabba, to the I'm not sure how to express how I feel, like I need to create another world or escape and kind of get lost in my mind and like think this through, of Gerard Way. And then we have just the chaotic, like if I'm in pain, I'm just going to destroy everything around me, of Bert. And then we have our next face, and that is Miss Williams, Hayley Williams of Paramore. And I hate saying that like she's the female representation in the space, as if her being female makes her worthy of a space on Mount Rushmore. It's not. But I do think it's important to acknowledge that she did become the defining like female of the emo pop punk worlds. And if you think about someone who set a precedent for what that could look like and open the doors for so many people like her to follow, she is the face, right? She is the leader. She is the person, whether she asks for it or not. But even without that, her voice, like showcasing the energy, like the teenage angst to its fullest, like the voice that beats all voices, and the stage presence, and the way to cross over genres so easily while still maintaining this true introspection, figuring out yourself, like putting your heart out there with the most energy, and just like whenever she hits the high note, right, and the way that the songs flow and like the lyrics, like you are screaming. It's the most cathartic feeling in the world, right? She creates that like no one else does in this scene. Very much more kind of self-discovery minded, but blending together all those things we said, like right, the pain of what I feel and the heartbreak mixed with like the political, like I'm not okay with what's around me, I don't agree with these things, and I want to stand against this. It's very punk mixed with the chaotic like pain and just the energy there, and the angst of the younger years. She has done that so perfectly. And Paramore, yes, of course, the rest of the band too, but she definitely is a showcase within that space. And of course, she opened the door and like made women and girls feel like they were part of it. And that's so important. And that's what I consider within my Mount Rushmore. So that's mine. There were obviously some other contenders, right? We could look at, members of Taking Back Sunday. We could bring Jesse Lacey into this conversation. I think he would have held a space there if he would have, had maybe some support and got himself together at a younger age. There's so many names that probably could fill this space, and I'm curious what you think that they are, like what your perspective would be. But in my world, like thinking about legacy that has lasted and like true like trailblazing leadership. Everything that happened, most of my bands are third wave, right? They were built off of the backs of everyone in the second wave and the first wave and the punk scene and all the harder like hardcore scenes and metal and all those things. So it's not like these have created something new, but I think they took what was building and they took it to a different level, and again brought communities together, like made this scene what it actually turned out to be. And I think they've stood the test of time to what we define emo as now and what people connect to with the emo genre as a whole and like the community of it. So that's my Mount Rushmore. I want to know what yours is. Please share. If you disagree with some of mine, just tell me why. Like, what would you do instead? And I did pick 5 people. You could pick fewer. I tried to only pick 4, but like I just couldn't. For me, those are the 5. I couldn't necessarily let any of them go. Like they're all so unique and have such a unique space that like they all fit for me. Um, so maybe your Mount Rushmore is more expanded than even mine, and that's okay. But I definitely want you to share. The best place to do that's probably YouTube. Again, you can comment. And then if you feel deeply about this conversation and you're like, oh, you completely missed like this big figure, this person, or this leadership, or you did not think about this side of it, come on the podcast. Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. In my show notes, you'll find my email. Just email me, and I'd love to get that set up so you can come in. Next week, we're going to continue with our band deep dives. So your homework this episode, this class, is to identify your own Mount Rushmore. Why? Share it somewhere. Maybe it's on social media. Maybe you share it with us. Maybe you share it on your own podcast. That would be great. And then in our next episode, in our next class, we'll learn about a new band. So come prepared to either enjoy a band you already love or find a new band within the space that you can love as equally as the others. So looking forward to it.